Welcome to the BigCheese podcast. My name is Sean Hise. I'll be your host today. As always, I'm here with Brandon Corbin.
Hello, everybody.
Resident AI fanboy. And Jacob.
Hey, guys.
Jacob, the CTO, and Chris Vanoy.
Howdy, y'all.
Our special guest today. We're going to be talking about developer productivity today, which is a really probably something that is near and dear to all of our hearts as developers. I believe all four of us are here on the podcast today are very experienced developers. So if you're looking to understand a little bit more about developer productivity, AI, tune in. Before we get into the podcast, I would like you to smash that like and subscribe button. Please. We need more subscribers. Somebody unsubscribed yesterday and ruined my day. It took me about an hour to figure out who they were. And
We're
stalk
sending
them
you
on
a
LinkedIn.
care package.
Yeah. We'll be knocking on your door later.
And that's the moment when which I realize people get push notifications when they're subscribers and they must not have liked something I sent. So we do have, actually, it was kind of a slow news cycle after Apple.
Yes.
And WWDC.
Yep.
Right. And then as it happens, it seems like this curve is just accelerating at an increasing rate.
Right.
And we talked about Anthropic on the pod last week because of the paper that they released. And, I had not been as tuned in to that company as much as some, but just give our viewers a little bit before we get into the news, just a little bit about the company, what you know about Anthropic and Claude.
Okay, so I'm going to let you go because you had this. They just released the 3.5 Sonnet, blowing people's minds. Very impressive model. You did some research on it, but yesterday I went and I signed up to be a paid full pro membership. So I do have some.
That's funny.
Some takes on
That's
it.
funny because I also signed up yesterday to be a paid member. And they just came out with 3.5 Sonnet, which is the benchmarks on it are great. It's a better at coding than the 4.0.
It's better than the 3.0 Opus.
Yeah,
it's outperforming even their biggest larger
they're
model.
kind of they're ultra or whatever.
Right.
And I played around with it. The projects feature is really cool. It's basically a way to build a context window about a specific topic or project that you're working on. You can upload documents. So I just saw the doctor today, and they told me I needed to do physical therapy. So I was like, went and found couple documents, PDFs on physical therapy for that specific injury, uploaded them and said, here's my issue, here's what I'd like, give me a rehab plan for the next week. And it was pretty good. I cross-referenced it against the documents that I had uploaded. But it's this whole idea of being able to store context and documents and then go back to that and have an ongoing conversation. Because next week I can say, okay, here's what worked, here's what didn't work.
Right.
And ChatGPT is scratching the surface with their memory. But I think this is just kind of the next progression of a more, it's got staying power. You can actually go back to it and continue that conversation.
So one thing so I saw James Payton, who we had, was that last week that he was on?
Yes.
So
James, I think so.
Two weeks ago. So James ended up posting a video where he was going through on LinkedIn and he was going through using the artifacts of Claude and doing some modifications and having it update and all this. So I'm like, that's why I'm signing up, because I want that.
Well, artifacts is different than projects, but it's awesome. Because artifacts is think of it as a component in your code base.
Right.
That is something you can update.
Okay,
project is the collection of all those things. Yeah.
Right. So you start a project, but a project then could have multiple artifacts in it.
Yeah.
How the fuck do I get Claude to generate the artifacts? You can upload the files, and then those are your artifacts, and then it can make modifications to it. But I just generate, I'm like, hey, I had this thing where I was both ChatGPT and Claude. I'm like, I want you to write an NPM package for a new thing called, we'll call it Press.js, and it's basically a Node JavaScript wrapper around the WordPress API.
Okay.
They both did a great job. But what I thought was going to happen is that as Claude was going to go through and generate the code, that those were going to become artifacts now automatically, and that I would then be like, oh no, I need to change this. So it's going to go and it's going to just update that artifact and not have to generate the entire code again. I couldn't figure out for the life of me. So here's my take, is that from a UX perspective, OpenAI is 100% better than Claude. Claude, in my humble opinion, great model maybe, but the user experience is dog shit.
Interesting take. See, I liked it better, but it's
Did
only
you?
okay. Full caveat: I've used it really full time for one day, so you have way more experience with it.
Right.
Yeah, well, you're trying to code.
Yeah.
And you were trying to do something that required a very specific,
It was.
large context window.
But even like when it generates the code, right? And you've got this code block now, and it's got copy and it's got a couple things. Add as an artifact, guys. Just let me click that button,
yeah.
turn that into
let
an
him
artifact.
iterate, man.
Yeah.
Give him a break.
Okay, I used it yesterday for, I thought, a little fun side project. I toy with Raspberry Pis every once in a while, and my dogs, go in and out of the house. And I want to make sure, I want to know when they're outside. So really, my neighbors have dogs too, and they're not allowed to be outside at the same time. They bark at the fence together. So I was like, how would I do this using maybe RFID chips or whatever? So it gave me a whole game plan, but then it drew a code generated diagram of the workflow, user flow of what that could look like.
Right.
I was like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I like where they're going, and it's good to see in general in a market competition, right? So I don't know what if I was an investor or if I was the CEO of this company, do I really think that I don't know. Or is there enough for multiple players in Silicon Valley to be the website you go to talk to AI?
Right.
I mean, there's. Go ahead.
Well, you're already starting to see a little bit of differentiation between some of the models are really good at coding, like you mentioned, Claude was good at that, user interface aside, right?
Yeah.
And then you've got others that are doing good for press releases or good for interviews, right? You
Yeah.
end up with these specializations that you jump from one to the other to find something it's actually good at.
Totally.
I think if you get one that really concentrates on code, and this might tie into what we talk about a little bit later, but as you were talking about projects, uploading a product requirements document and then getting that workflow out and then taking each one of those pieces and turning it into code and get the whole chain could get really interesting. If somebody really wanted to double down on a specialty for one of these LLMs, I'm really good at this.
Yeah, well, I like that. And I think that one of the things I saw on Twitter this week is that somebody uploaded a research paper and Claude was able to generate a interactive experience from that. And I thought that was really cool. It's hey, it's not just going to ask it questions and have a chat-based interface, but it was able to create a unique, almost interactive, almost a little microsite.
Right.
Right. And I think that that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
As these AI companies figure out the deliverables of AI, right? A flow chart would be really good. An interactive, search kind of click around interface where things are categorized and just digestible, right? Because a lot of research papers are nobody wants to read that PDF. It's not. It just doesn't feel right. You have to
And not
read.
everybody needs.
Oh God, not really.
It's like the abstract at the top. If that were visualized into some key points, that would be way. I just want to kind of generally understand what they're talking about.
It's
here.
you read you go buy a novel. Like I always said, is this one a novel I need to read the whole thing, or can I read literally the first chapter where they actually wrote the book and then the rest was just filler?
Yeah.
But I do like the concept of the deliverable not always being the answer, meaning the image that you need or the code that you need. Maybe it's more of the flow chart or it's taking the requirements and building out, suggestions. It's an augmented solution. It's not the solution.
Right.
Yeah.
I will say that, so in terms of the code, it does seem that Claude 3.5 Sonnet code is better than 4.0's code. But I will say that in terms of creative writing, 4.0 spanks Claude. Claude's very terse, very kind of to the point, where 4.0 just wants to talk your fucking ear off.
Yeah.
4.0 just wants to, every time you ask a question, it's okay, here's your answer. Oh, by the way, here's all the code that we've ever generated before, right? And it just goes crazy. And but I will say I haven't been impressed with the creative writing side of Claude versus 4.0. But the code side's been really
speaking
impressive.
of ChatGPT, OpenAI been relatively quiet since 4.0.
Since the announcement.
So we one of the coolest things that has been demoed in the last 6 months is their voice feature. Right?
Yeah.
And the zero latency piece.
Yeah.
Even though we know that it's a better skeleton loading state. Right.
Right.
But
that's an interesting question. Let me ponder that. And then all of a sudden then it catches up.
Right.
Yeah.
But they announced that they're delaying the launch of their voice feature. And the way that they indicated is that I think this thing is completely unregulated and off the chains.
Probably is.
Yeah.
And I think because of the way that you're interacting with it, like the conversations that they were having, that their trainers and their testers were having, got pretty morbid,
Yeah.
pretty quick.
Right.
Yeah.
And
And it was all sexy talk too during the whole thing. She's like, "Oh, breathy. Oh, that's an interesting idea. I hope you die."
Well, there's also an aspect of like demo ready versus production ready, right? Like it might have been a little massaged and a little practiced, and
I
like
know.
what you're seeing may not reflect reality.
Totally.
well, it kind of here's where I'm going with it. There's a big difference between text responses and a personified response.
Yeah.
Meaning it's a human voice in it, and you're talking to it. There's a zero limit to the accessibility of that, right? Like a 3-year-old could have that conversation if they get the mom and dad's app.
It's a
And
terrifying thought.
right? and so I think that there's either, like you said, it's just not production ready, or this scared the crap out of somebody, even for a company that literally just fired their entire safety staff.
Right. They're like,
There's
"Oh, yeah."
somebody there to be scared.
Yeah, I mean,
Hold
like
on.
they that's what I found shocking is like this company literally threw the baby out with the bathwater. They're going for profit.
Yeah.
They don't care about your personal safety anymore, right? They wasn't about like oh, we're gonna build an AI system that's has a moral compass or whatever.
Right.
And they're the ones pulling the reins back. So I'm gonna go with bullshit on this. I think it's just probably too buggy.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like in 6 months or less, we're going to be having conversations with AI avatars that have zero latency, that look like somebody, right? That are maybe are even you. I don't know if you, like in video games, you have the mimic concept, like where you duplicate yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to be talking to ourselves.
Yeah.
Don't we already do that though?
Yeah,
Like,
we do.
Is that just me?
Yeah, in real life.
Sorry.
I know. Good point, right? We do it all day long, but now we're gonna have this like
No, again, we're going to see it in email, or I mean, in video games, right? Like the NPCs are going to become smart. I mean, it's going to be a wild ride incorporating intelligence, quote unquote intelligence. So don't let all the purists get all upset that these things aren't intelligent or reasoning. Because as far as I'm concerned, as long as it looks like it's intelligent, and I can't tell a difference, then it's intelligent, right? Like maybe not like if we get down to the nitty gritty, but yeah, we're going to see this thing where it's just incorporated all the time. The one thing that I'm the most excited for versus the video games, I'm not a gamer, but is media, and they covered this in a Black Mirror episode where basically the equivalent of a Netflix, which was kind of funny because it was so meta, like it was Netflix, but it wasn't Netflix inside a Netflix show, that they basically were producing this show in real time with AI, right? And we're going to get there. So right now, my wife is obsessed, and she's going to watch this and she's going to be like, I can't believe you told everybody this. With this trial that's going on in Massachusetts, Karen, I believe her name is, they charged her with killing her husband, but it looks like it's complete corruption. This guy was a cop. It looks like he was potentially killed by other cops, and they're blaming her for it. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. The judge is suspect. I mean, all of this is just nuts. So she has, for like the last 3 weeks, been watching this thing in real time and just like can't stop. Like every time I go to upstairs, from my office, I go upstairs and she's sitting there in the kitchen doing whatever, and that thing's running the trial. And so, of course, Netflix apparently has been in there recording this, recording it and trying to capture. So there's going to be a show coming out. But imagine if they could literally be taking that footage and generating the show almost like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours after the event happens versus waiting for 6 months, right? I think we're going to eventually get to a point where the Johnny Depp case was another one that she got really obsessed with. Then Netflix came out with the show like 5 months later, but it was a little bit more leaning towards Amber Heard's case versus Johnny Depp. Emily was 100% on Team Depp, right? That was her thing.
every single woman was, right? They
Exactly.
were all hating
Yeah,
on
they all
Amber
were.
Heard.
They all were. But now imagine being like, hey, what bent do you want on this show? I want it to be more bent towards my favorite, which was Depp, or I want it to be more bent towards Herb.
What was that Netflix show that you could pick your own
But it
path.
did. But it didn't work on the Apple TV. That one.
Yeah.
Well, it was just announced today. NBC has the Olympics coming up.
Yeah.
And so they made an AI version of Al Michaels that will do like your own personalized highlight package if you are on Peacock.
Really?
Yeah. Just announced it today. Al Michaels like approved it, said like, yeah, totally go do it. So
Dude,
AI generated voice of Al Michaels, custom narrating whatever you care about.
Right.
Can we make
That's
it
actually
dirty, though?
That's what I'm waiting for. Is for Al
dirty
Michaels
to
to
me,
just
Al.
say
that's
filthy
actually
shit.
such a good example of a use case for AI. So I forget which announcer it was, but like they go. I think it was like Clark Kellogg. So they go when they shoot those video game voiceovers. They have to announce every single variation of every single thing that could happen. Like 3rd and 32. What is this guy doing? Like all that stuff. But think about them. Not only the data that's coming in, right? So they're getting all this like high quality person specific data. But then think about throwing the ability for that data to be not just binary. Like it's not just here's what it can say.
Yeah. And with Al Michaels, you've got like 50 years of high quality audio of Olympics events even. Like it's a really good data set to build that sort of model on top.
Yeah, so I was playing around with Claude, and there was a tutorial I watched about making a video game, and part of the video game was it was that boxing glove hitting a ball, right? Well, part of it was he went and got generated the boxing glove image off of one of the Dolly or something, and he used 11 Labs or the other one to do some sound effect
voice.
kind of stuff and the voiceover kind of stuff. But like you could like start to stitch together some really interesting complete projects based off of AI generated things that might derive from the voices that you captured. But it's pretty cool. Like.
Yeah.
I was just the sound. Did you hear me playing with the sound effects yesterday?
Oh yeah.
It was just like a thunder storm in a big city. It's like, and I'm just like, that's cool.
Speaking of sound, our friends over at Suno got sued. So Suno is a very popular AI platform for generating music.
Yep. I'm still trying to figure out if they were the ones that generated that how do you spell chauffeur song that went hyper viral.
I mean, it's one of those things like you could probably spend 30 minutes a day messing with that thing and having a lot of fun, and you just like don't have time to.
Yeah.
But like that site's a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun. So like I've done birthday songs for folks. Like I'll go in, I'll be like, here's who they are, here's what they're thinking. Just generate a song, send it to them on their birthday.
Oh, that's
right.
nice. That's nice.
It's good for you can generate intro and outro music for your podcast. You can do all this, and basically where it's going to generate a minute long song based on whatever you want. So the RIAA, the Recording Industry of America, whatever they are, the people that basically sued everybody back in the Napster days, and the Audio Galaxy
and restaurants to make sure that they have clearance to play all their songs.
Exactly,
Which is
The
such
music
a weird,
police.
such a weird thing.
The music police. So they're suing them, saying that they've trained their models on a bunch of copyrighted material, and that they can go out and they can generate songs that are very close to Buddy Holly's song or whatever.
Yeah.
I think we're going to get into a point here, though, where we're going to need almost entirely new laws about copyright. Because,
Well, I agree, and it comes back to my favorite quote from Ernest Goes to Camp.
Why would you have that?
Please tell us what the favorite quote of Ernest Goes to Camp is.
Who can own a tree?
Oh, shit, dude.
Who can own a tree?
Oh, this got deep in our herd.
This just got deep. Thank you, Ernst.
Right.
Ernest.
Like who can own a musical note?
Right.
Who can own the combination of chords that generate appeal to a human?
Right.
No one.
Yeah.
Right? Like Taylor Swift doesn't own the G chord. I know you play it every fucking song. Right? But like the fact that it was trained, to me, the fact that it's trained on other people's music means nothing.
Yeah.
Like, right? Like I listen to music. I learn music.
You can listen to a Taylor Swift song. You can go and write a new song that's kind of inspired by it.
That's what they all do.
Does that mean you're stealing?
That's what their industry's been doing for years.
Well, and there is a line, right? Like there's been existing like copyright stuff that's gone about it. I can't remember a particular example now, but it's like there was an old like VH1 like thing about Vanilla Ice. That sounds
yeah.
exactly like Under Pressure, but I remember a quote from it. I quote it to my kids all the time. It's like, no, ours goes dun 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 dun.
Yeah.
Like very
Right.
slightly different.
Right.
Yeah.
And you get those sort of lawsuits. It's like, where's the line between like inspired by and direct ripoff?
Totally. So
Yeah.
so Diddy used a song from Sting, like Every Breath You Take or something
yeah.
like that, right? And it ended up being where he had to pay some crazy amount every year, is like 150 grand.
Well,
he had
Sting
to pay.
was in the music video with Puff.
Was he?
Yeah.
just more of
So-
like, hey, thank you for the money.
Yeah,
but
lawsuit
it's
must happen
basically
before
like
the video,
the
yeah.
guys made $5 million. But the thing that I think becomes problematic for this entire thing is that right now I could go write a blog post that describes Taylor Swift's music. And she starts here, she does this, she sings this, this is the style, these are the chords she uses. This is all of the information about it without ever once playing her music. And I could train an AI on that and have it generate a song that probably sounds close to Taylor Swift. Is that copyright? Right? Like no, I don't think it is. Like it's just being inspired by her style and then mimicking the style. So is that not really what we're doing when we're training these? We're taking the understanding, we're taking the bits, we're taking the process, we're taking the flow, and then we're generating something that's based on that. To me, that doesn't seem like it's a copyright thing.
I
Now,
think
it
it's
may or may not
copyrighted.
be.
I think it's copyright if you go, hey, here's Taylor Swift's song, copy it.
Yeah, totally.
Right? Like make a song that's exactly like that.
Right, or
Like what you're
make a
saying.
new song that sounds like Taylor Swift singing it, and I want to go out and be like, "This is Taylor Swift's new song." That's problematic because again, I'm tagging Taylor Swift to this. I don't know. I mean, it seems
I don't
like a
know.
sticky space we're in.
The other piece of unsettled law is not the output of these things, but more like what's going into the training data, right? So you're taking copywriting material, and this is true across all of them, right? Taking copyrighted material and using that to train your model.
Sure.
So you're using that
Yeah,
material. to
you're
do
right.
things.
You're right.
And that law isn't even fully settled.
Well,
Right.
and that's a
Yeah.
good point. Like, okay, so all things considered, the concepts are not new,
Yeah,
right? Music has existed and notes, blah blah blah. But if you're taking that data that you don't own and using it in the training the model, I do think that you have an argument then.
but so same with there's no difference between the image models, right? The same exact
No.
thing. I've got a sequence of pixels. And the sequence of pixels that I see is pretty much standard. So when I generate a new one, I'm going to take the sequence of pixels and I'm going to try to figure out what's the next one or what the proper one is. I don't know. I don't think I'm just, nevertheless, I think ultimately generative AI, we're going to have a whole new set of laws that are going to basically be set up.
Yeah, existing fair use doctrine
Right.
doesn't work
It
for
just
hardly
doesn't
any of
cover
this.
it.
Like it's a completely different use
Exactly.
case than that stuff.
I do have a question. I don't know if we have any music buffs in here, but like,
I know someone who's
how
in
do
a
you
band
make
that
money
sings.
in music these days?
You're in a band.
Well, they
You
don't make
answer
any money.
for us.
We don't make
Isn't
any
it just
money.
your image though? Like
Like literally, yeah, it's
I
just
think
your
it's- I
image.
think
You
it's
don't
your
make money on
concerts.
your music.
But you make
Yeah.
it on the
Yeah.
same exact thing that it's actually always been.
Really?
Right? Which is it's your tours,
I
it's
feel
your
like
merch.
back in the day, the CD
CDs absolutely did. Like we had a sweet spot, like from like
They must have been
80
just
to-
cranking it,
totally,
dude.
80 to 95, 96.
Yeah, that
was
brief
the
window before
heyday.
MP3s and where you
Exactly.
could rip
Metallica's
CDs. Yeah.
making millions of dollars off their CDs, and all of a sudden Napster comes up, and they're like, "Wait a minute!" And now we got to go back to
buy
what?
my record was the call to action,
Yeah,
and now it's come to my concert.
yeah,
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, because that's the thing you can't replicate and can't widely
Totally.
distribute.
But
can't-
wasn't that originally like if we really think
Yeah,
about what
yeah,
music
really cinema,
was
yeah.
really was back
It's always
then.
been a
It's
performance
always,
art.
exactly. You go and you enjoy the thing. You maybe buy some of their shit, and then you buy some of their stuff later on. I mean, that's what it's always been about. It hasn't been just capitalizing on the format of how I deliver my music. It was much more about how do I experience it in a holistic way. But
So if you're a famous musician, deal with it.
dude, the whole Metallica thing, when that all came out with Napster and that they were suing fans for pirating their music, man, that was a weird time.
Oh,
that we
yeah.
were
I got
in.
a cease and desist from Eminem one time.
No, you didn't? Really?
Yeah, well, my roommate, we shared, I had a roommate who shared the internet and we used Comcast or whatever, and they must have downloaded an Eminem song that was like tracked or whatever.
totally.
And I opened up this letter because I was the one paying for the internet, and it was like, Eminem says, stop it.
So we've had
Sure.
I've had many stop doing this from from Comcast specifically.
Really?
So, oh yeah. Like again, I was. I'm not saying I'm a pirater. But I pirated a lot of stuff back in the day, and I had like the Windows MP or personal video recorder, like the greatest software Microsoft has ever written, which was their like personal PVR software. It was like this 10-foot UI where you could have like it looked like TiVo. I mean, it was nuts. So anyway, back then, sure enough, I would constantly be getting them. Finally said, okay, I'm setting up a VPN, and now I'm not getting them anymore. But then all of a sudden, I got one for downloading this game. And I'm like, what the hell is this? So I go up to my son. I'm like, hey, we just got a notification for pirating this game. And he's like, what? He's like, I literally just finished downloading it. And I'm like, hey, listen, if you're going to do this, you need to talk to me about it, bro.
Yeah, tell you how to do it
I'm going to give you my account to Proton VPN.
I don't care if you do it.
I know, no, totally.
I love how he goes, I just installed the VPN and now I'm like versus like I reformed my sinner ways.
The modern birds and the bees talk. It's
Yeah.
like,
No, it was
how to
crazy.
internet safely.
Yeah, so the same thing. It is funny. So by the way, if you're pirating stuff using BitTorrent, they can see your IP address. Everybody, and they literally just sit there looking at that one specific file, look at all these IP addresses that are downloading it. They're going to take all those and they're going to blast it out to whatever network providers on those IP addresses, and you're going to get dinged. So just stop doing it. Use a VPN.
Yeah, run a VPN kit.
Yeah, that's it.
Yep.
Too slow.
So Proton VPN has actually been really quick.
Is it?
This episode has been brought to you by
Proton VPN. By the way, actually, what's funny is we are starting to get. I'm getting more and more people hitting us up to promote their products, and where they've got affiliate stuff, and there's maybe money to be made there, but most of
We
them are
will
like,
make money on this podcast one day.
eventually, some
But
point.
before we start printing all this money with our podcast, let's talk about my favorite topic, probably developer productivity. So, I think that AI is a piece of this here, but I think we have 4 developers sitting here. I think we can all agree on one thing, which is one developer versus another developer, not always the same output.
No. Yeah. And it's not often even talent level or anything. Like it is just sometimes it's unlocking the right thing in the person's head, right? That suddenly it just flows.
Right.
Like most productivity for developers happens when they're in flow state.
Yep.
When they know where they're going to go and how to get there, and they just fly, right? And that's where you end up losing an entire afternoon because you've been cranking on something the entire time, right? And one person might have lower starting friction, so they get into flow state easier, and then they're more productive and everything else. Whereas someone else might take them longer to get into that, but then once they do, they go down that road, or they have better knowledge for you just happen to get them into the right zone from there. Sorry, that went off the AI.
No.
That's really good.
It's totally
So flow state is basically something that most people, I feel like, need to find a way to, in their profession, if they can, achieve that.
I would argue that AI, because we were talking about this before the show, AI can help you. It can hurt you too, but it can help you get into flow state. Like the other day, I had an issue and I didn't know how to get started. So what normally I would do is I'd sit there and I'd think about it really hard for as long as it took.
It just popped in there.
No, I go Google 50 things and eventually I'd figure out the right thing to Google and I would eventually get there. But AI, chatbots, I can describe generally what the problem is and I can get a good mental model of where I'm trying to go.
Yeah.
Then I can get back to coding and get right back into that flow state. So can help there.
Yeah.
It's also hurt me when I've stepped out too soon when I wasn't ready to ask the question. And it's like I really just needed to keep going because I was this close, Yeah. So
in my case, I found that it hurts me a lot. Again, you're talking to somebody that turned off code completion a long time ago because it would be wrong just often enough that it would piss me off. I'd get out of flow state and I'd be like, just go away.
Yeah.
So I turned it all off because oftentimes when it's a lot of these tools are wrong just often enough that they can trigger that and knock you out of it. And it's like, wait, that was weird. That wasn't what I actually expected it to be.
Yeah.
And then you'll go further.
Yep.
You'll end up breaking out of that state where you can be super productive, right? For the starting friction block that part is interesting, right? Like I kind of mentioned earlier, your product person gives you a set of requirements, and the breaking down of those requirements into the individual tasks you have to go do, right? Some people that comes naturally and they just go, right? There's lots of other folks who they need to break that down ahead of time. And if you can throw that into Claude or some other AI and then hey, what this actually means is you need to do this, that's in this, right? Can help grease the wheels and get that starting friction out of the way.
Right.
I think that one thing that we've been doing with developer productivity is trying to completely abstract developers away from having to do any sort of reporting or accountability on their own. It's just done for them.
Thank you.
So
Seriously.
So one thing that I do is I go through and I create a report from Jira of all the tickets that have been worked on and all the activity and stream that.
Right.
And I get everything. I get all the comments, I get all the descriptions, I get the task name, and I throw that into ChatGPT and I say, hey, what happened last week?
Oh, that's cool.
I think I've noticed it helps incentivize actually using those tools and writing better comments and all that, because before it's like, oh, comment your code, make sure you're doing, but half the time we don't even look back at it. And sure, 6 months from now, you might be thanking yourself for documenting it well, but you may not either. You may not ever look at that piece of code again.
I think that creating real-time content is the best way to, put your stuff into a leverageable AI solution later.
Right.
Now,
did you do this with code, or are you just copying and pasting?
Oh no,
I
just create a really nice web view of it. So when I copy and paste it into ChatGPT, it knows what the hell I'm doing.
You just grab it.
Completely manual.
Yeah.
And I think that's advice is figure out a way if you can, just toss some stuff in there.
Exactly.
Just toss it in there.
Then you can figure out how to automate it once it's done. I did that with, I don't know if we talked about it, but one of my clients, I needed to get them excited about AI. So I just went and I went to the Better Business Bureau and I started grabbing all the complaints and the reviews and basically just literally, I'm just select, and just copy it, drop it into our AI tool, and I just ask it, hey, summarize this. And they're just oh my God. I'm yeah, that's literally, you just copy huge amounts of text, throw it in there, ask your question. You don't need RAG, you don't need any of this shit. Just copy, paste, ask your question.
Yeah, and on the other side of it, you also have code generation, which is actually proving to be one of the most interesting aspects of ChatGPT, Claude. Here we go, Brandon. Kick something.
I'm starting to break things.
How are you guys using AI to generate code right now?
I'll go first.
Yeah.
So I'm all in, right? So at night, usually, so what happens is I go down and I'm all right, I'm just gonna get on my iPad. I'm not gonna code anything. And then I'm I've got no idea. So last night was, I needed to have this WordPress wrapper in JavaScript. And I've done this before. I did it for our BigCheese. A lot of it's automated, so I've already written some of it. But I'm kind of curious to see what would happen if I'd ask ChatGPT and Claude to basically go and do this. So I'm I want you to build me an NPM package that's TypeScript based that basically is just a node wrapper around the WordPress API. And then just go. And sure enough, right, both of them, ChatGPT, here's what our file structure is going to be. And then it just goes, here's what your TS config is. Here's what your NPM or your package.json is. Here's the main file. Here's all of this. And it just goes through and it generates it. Claude did the same exact thing. All of them though, and then literally just copy and paste and you build it out and you're done. You're done. And it worked. And it's just this is actually really incredible. Again, nothing novel. Right, all we're doing is we're taking this PHP-based API that has all the documentation and now make it accessible through JavaScript. But the reality is that I would have to spend 3 days basically writing this by hand, testing it, validating all of it. In literally 30 minutes, I had all of it done for me, and it was ready to go. And I could just basically copy and paste and build it out, and I'm rocking. That is, again, that's kind of my thing. Is I don't think developers get replaced here. I think developers who don't use AI get replaced by developers who do use AI, because all of a sudden that one feature that I had to build, I was able to do it in 30 minutes versus 3 days.
But it sounds like from what I'm hearing with you and how you're doing it, you're going to AI, especially when you are doing something with an API that you don't typically interact with.
Yes. Yeah.
Versus I'm just writing JavaScript and front end stuff today.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like your own
it's the
custom
stuff. It's the stuff that you know tangentially, but you aren't necessarily an expert on.
Yeah, it's very much like, here's what I know exactly what I need to build. I know the LLM probably has a good model of what I need to build already. And so go and just build that for me so I don't need to spend the time. Let me focus on the novel things, the things that you don't have an idea of, the things that we haven't figured out yet. That's where I want to spend my time, not this bullshit of just dealing with things that already exist that we already know about.
Yeah, it's using AI to do the commodity code, like the library code.
Commodity code.
Yeah, it's how I think a lot
That's
about the
awesome.
current state of AI is that
Yeah.
it replaces commodity resources, right?
100%.
Lops off like the bottom end of the market. Like that task you just described, you would have put on like Fiverr or farmed out to somebody.
Exactly.
Low value, like here,
Right.
go do this thing,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And it's
Or
that
like
sort of
me, you would
workflow
have just
works.
been like, man, I don't want to do this. And then just stop completely. That's a lot of busy work.
I don't want to do it.
That
right.
seems hard.
It seems like I gotta like read stuff.
Yeah. So no, those are the things that I find extremely valuable right now, is that I can just offload a lot of that work, and I can, but at the end of the day, it's still code that I can review, that I can validate, that I can be like, all right, this is it. This is going into my repository.
You want to know, so to your point of like commodity versus novel, I was using a library that is fairly new. The documentation isn't that great yet. And I copied some of their code and I was asking questions because I wasn't getting like this event to fire, right? They didn't answer my question because it just hasn't been in existence long enough and didn't know. But it did tell me like 3 errors that their code had. And I was like, oh yeah, they aren't awaiting that. Like it didn't matter because because I was just firing off a thing and technically I didn't have to await, but you probably should await still. And there was I was like, oh, it's probably good for like, if I were trying to learn a new language, paste the code in,
Dude,
and then
totally.
tell me
the code translation sort of
explain
aspect.
that, yeah.
The like,
Yeah.
I have this code in JavaScript. What does it look like in Ruby
Right.
or like something
Yeah.
like
Right.
that? And like
Yeah.
translation.
Well, and we're talking about developer productivity, not developer replacement or developer training.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. We're talking about productivity, and productivity means that you have to be that profession. You
Yeah.
don't just go start working on cars, right, and fixing them on day
Exactly.
one,
And,
right?
And like one of my clients had a junior developer at one point that they hired and then started to try and do all their code through AI chat GPT stuff. And that didn't work.
No. No.
That didn't work
That
very
might
long
be
at
one
all.
of the dumbest things you could do.
Yeah. If anybody is going to be using ChatGPT to generate code, it needs to be a senior guy.
Yeah,
Right? Because
exactly.
the senior guy's
So-
going to be like, you idiot.
So Jacob and I at Crafted have
Craftedup.com.
craftedup.com. We have 10 developers that work for us. And Jacob and I adopted AI as a test about 1.5 years ago. And then about 8 months later, we let 2 of our senior developers start utilizing AI as a test because we knew that the junior developers would not, we thought that their growth would actually be,
like
would be stopped.
the writing of code is the easy part. Right? The understanding of code and translating the code into what this thing is actually supposed to be doing. And does that match what the user told me or what the product person told me? That's the hard shit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And you know what else is hard is, hey, customer called, everything's busted. Right? And now you go, everything's alert and 10. And AI isn't gonna fix that. Right? You have to have so many different so much different expertise, understanding into it. Like there's so many different skills that come into that moment that prepare you for that.
Even if AI could fix it, which they might be able to help you, you still need to ask appropriate questions around. We had a DNS issue yesterday, right?
Oh, yeah.
And the reason I knew how to solve that is because I've experienced that issue like before, right? And I knew, so like senior developers have the experience to leverage to ask the right questions to get eventually. AI might be able to supplement or give me a little bit of extra, like fill in the blanks of, oh yeah, I've never seen that. Maybe we'll try that too. But if I'm just like sitting here as a new developer and never had this issue before and a customer site went down and I'm just going to be looking at a blank screen with a cursor blinking and be like, oh shit, what do I do?
In a previous life, I was a coding bootcamp instructor. So I take adults and day one is like teaching you what a variable is, right? And the thing I told them all the time is that the difference between a junior developer and a senior developer is how many bugs you've written and how many bugs you've fixed, right? And that comes from understanding code, fixing code, like just experience over time of how many mistakes have you made and how quickly can you recover from those mistakes.
I think one of the best developer tests that I have is when there's a production bug, how fast they fix it.
Yeah.
And I think that there's two things that come into that: understanding of the code base they're working in, and previous experience.
Yeah, and staying calm under pressure, which I think those two things lend to that. Like, I used to get really flustered when something would break, and now it's like, dude, I've seen so much shit break. Like,
But
like,
how many times? How many times though? How many times though has those situations come down? You actually look back and you go, that's actually insane that was even fixed. Or like how did I get to the point where I literally found that one file in that little character, and then the whole system just goes back to right? Like there's it's just a thin red line that holds all this stuff together, and you can't. It has to come here. Yeah. It has to come from capable, people that are maintaining these systems.
Yeah. Oftentimes I've had the opposite experience of how did this ever work?
Yeah. That's a better way of putting it. I mean, it's like, in the world of, so for product managers, I got a confession to make. This whole thing's a fucking house of cards. Okay. So like
it's a wonder anything works.
Yeah. I mean, like we have polyfill.io. They got hacked by China this week.
Right.
Did you see that?
Yeah. Well, I didn't see Polyfill was hacked by China. That's crazy.
So polyfill.io was a third-party library that you would include to support
everything.
It would just include a bunch of JavaScript that made your website work on older browsers. Well, the domain didn't get renewed, and someone from China bought the domain, and so anyone that had that script put on their website got redirected to a scam.
Which again is almost everybody. Like,
right. So we had the npm package a year ago.
Yeah,
the left pad. And that was just like a
literally it was like 4 lines of code. Adding padding to the left line. Right.
So you have all these packages that are maintained by people that you don't know that are in a public registry that hold up all of our software. Okay, and we're supposed to make this shit work. Yeah. Junior developer walks in and goes npm install. You don't, and it just installs the latest package. You deploy it to production, and you think everything's great. Hey. Literally, banking software is running on this stuff.
There was some npm package the other day that I chuckled at, where like the developer who maintained it was an underlying one. I forget which one it was, but underlying package that a lot of packages used. And he was just fed up. Someone like wrote him like a threatening comment about, you need to fix this shit. And he's like, I quit.
Just no
half the fucking internet goes down.
So I do have a question about that. Who the hell wants to maintain open source software?
Nobody. If you've ever done it. So I did it, right? So I for 8 years, I ran an open source project called Nomi, right? And I'll tell you what, dude, it is the most painful experience ever. No one wants to give you money for shit. Everybody wants to complain about absolutely everything. And then you get these pull requests of assholes who have no idea what they're doing. And you're just like, well, oh, no. Like, what the hell is this? I mean, and so it's very easy to see how like you could do just traditional human engineering to basically fool these guys. Again, somebody could come to me. There's been multiple times that this has happened where somebody's like, hey, they start engaging with a package guy who's managing their open source thing, giving them feedback, giving them ideas, and just talking to them for like a year. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, I just submitted a PR to go fix this one bug. They're like, well, I've been talking with this guy for a year now. I trust him. Go ahead and do it. No, man. And then he sneaks in his little nefarious shit.
Now that brings us to the point where what happened? Oh yeah, we're talking about AI could solve some of these issues, like where you could have, and I'm sure like Cloudflare does the obfuscation stuff, but I'm sure there's packages that GitHub's working on. I think I saw one the other day, but that they should be able to scan your code.
Exactly. And that PR has all of a sudden you've just added some external call to a home server in China or wherever. Yeah. That would be huge.
AI and code review generally is a good idea. Because humans are not particularly good at spotting like syntax errors or
Sure.
slight logic errors.
So why-
and that
Humans
sort
aren't
of thing.
particularly good at not rubber stamping PRs.
Well, 100%.
That's really what I'm saying.
Yeah. Looks good. Sounds good to me.
I got a PR, great. Fucking merge that shit.
But I wonder why aren't we seeing more of that at GitHub, considering that Microsoft owns GitHub, right? And Microsoft now owns OpenAI, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
Why are we not seeing that yet? Like, you'd think that that's like a simple one that they would be like, yeah, let's just do this on the github.com. Let's just make it. Any PRs that come in get basically analyzed by
I mean, they got
AI.
Dependabot and Securabot, and I don't know where those bots come from.
I just ignore my Dependabot emails every week.
Also,
that I get.
if you're Microsoft, like how much revenue does GitHub bring in, right? How much resources are you devoting to that?
The data side of things?
The data side, yeah, but you
Right.
don't need to do code review to
Yeah,
get that
that's
data,
true.
right?
No, you're right. They got bigger fish to fry.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's
bigger
bullshit
opportunities.
though, because it's needed. Like, I mean, like it literally is how we can protect our internet is by having a third eye basically sitting here watching when these people are trying to do this stuff, and we would have been able to mitigate a lot of the problems that we've had.
Well, I would say two things. Now we're talking about security, but understanding that your software is a collection of code that you didn't write, and then don't hard code your fucking API keys
Right.
because
Rabbit.
because that's what Rabbit did. I don't know. So Rabbity Mr. Rabbit got. You ever seen that scene in Snatch where where the dog and the rabbit? And they have to bet. The rabbit gets fucked, and the rabbit does not.
So wait, so Rabbit,
the hardware device,
Yeah.
So some people have figured out, well, really what it is it's actually just running Android, and it's got a piece of software. The Rabbit software is literally just an app that's running on Android. So people have been able to extract it and then found all of the keys.
So
They just
had
hard-coded
four,
it in the source?
they had four hard-coded API keys.
So 11
And
labs.
so 11 labs,
Right.
and then another one, but the one API key that, and by the way, when they published the article, Rabbit did not revoke any of the API
No.
keys. They were all still active.
They're like, no, our researchers went in and looked, and it's fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They literally
not how that
responded.
works.
And the security company that hit them, they were like, we can see everything that your users have ever done on this platform
Yeah.
with this API key. We can use this API key. We can get all the history, everything that they have ever done.
Dude.
We can expose you.
Yeah,
And
bad.
and I think that comes to the bad side of AI, which is people chasing this thing that is not going to work. We talked about the product dilution. 500 plus image generation apps, 500 plus content generation apps. Everybody wants to develop this and this or that, but like they're taking that mindset that isn't, I want to create value and create a company.
Right.
They're just cash grabbing.
If the guy who created the product also was a former crypto bureau pushing some shit coin,
And that's true, right?
Yeah, it is.
just for new listeners.
You're getting that. You are the product, people.
Yeah.
You're the product. Like you've been
it's
had.
too bad, dude, because like that, there's a lot of cool concepts that team brought, but it was all bullshit. Like the large action model, right? Not a thing. Doesn't exist. Sorry.
There we go again. Yeah, and I mean, you're not going to replace
ADHD
you're not going to. People aren't going to stop buying iPhones.
No.
Dumb. But I do think that like when it comes to products and AI, like you have to understand that like a lot of people are in this just for the cash.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, totally.
There's a lot of folks that are looking at AI as the what instead of the how.
Yeah.
Right? It's like we have to go do AI because our venture fund folks want us to do AI so that they can get more money, right?
Yeah.
Instead of flipping it around and asking, what is the thing we want to do? What is the what?
Right.
And then we'll figure out AI is the how to go make that happen.
Yeah, and that's why I think if I'm a developer, if I'm in the tech, if I'm really in any sort of blue collar productivity industry, think of AI as a way that the tools there's a lot of tools out there right now that can just augment your productivity, help you be better. Worry about your privacy, worry about your security, understand what your company's AI policies are.
Right.
But like
if they have them.
well, and we have that comes my story. I have that story, but you should be using, or at least trying to use AI to help you get the mundane stuff done. Cause that stuff, The mundane is what you get the thumbs up from your boss for.
Yeah.
Like, thank you for that report. Thank you for that really well crafted email.
Did you watch that little snippet video with Opus? Not Opus.
Oh, the one that you shared on the
Claude Sonnet 3.5.
I need to figure out how.
I want to figure out how to do that. So talking about like mundane stuff, they had a program that like it was just a little Python script that like took an image and then cropped it into a circle and removed the background, made it a PNG or something. Yeah, there's a bug. So they used Claude to fix the bug, but also write a test. And they gave it access within a sandbox environment to like be able to read and write files. So like they literally from the terminal were like, "Hey, write me a test script for this function file." And I'm like, oh, "Okay, that looks like it would be fun."
That was awesome.
Yeah, I want to figure that out.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out how they actually pulled it off though, because it was all running locally. So I absolutely now, like once you shared that, I'm like, I got to figure out how to. How to do this.
So here's the I was going to turn this on the head because we had a situation where in the last 2 weeks, I don't know if you've had AI join your meetings. Who has had a Zoom meeting where an AI joined?
Yeah.
I have a huge problem with that.
Yeah.
I do not like it. I think it's completely intrusive.
Yep.
I say shit on meetings that I would never say if it was recorded for a reason. But it's coming to one of my clients now where the boss is joining a meeting that they're not invited to with their AI.
That's going to happen.
That's fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
That'll happen.
So
it's like the promise is, oh, well, we can record the meeting and we can do notes, and later on, if you want to review what happened, cool. But the reality is, well, now the boss can come and watch this meeting, and then you're just never not being watched.
Yeah. No. So again, like with one of my clients, the idea basically being able to take the entire data estate and turn it into an AI addressable system, that if you have the right access, as a CEO would, a CEO could hypothetically come in and say, "Hey, show me every transcript that talks poorly about the CEO."
Yeah.
Correct. And here's the problem that I'm seeing. No one's talking in these meetings anymore.
Yeah.
Well, if you're in sales organizations, like you've already lived in this world for a long time. Like Gong is in every sales call you've ever done.
So what's the just like listening into all your
listening
calls?
in all the sales calls that later on they'll get transcripts for, they'll run analysis on.
So
and
we're
then
just
they
being
do
held
sales
accountable
coaching and
like
stuff
other
like
people
that.
have already
Yeah,
been.
like every sales team.
Damn
software
it! They
sales
got
has
us.
been
They
living in this
finally
world for
found
2
us.
years now.
Damn it!
right out of college, I did this really shitty job with selling DirecTV or Dish Network. Anyway,
We were just talking about them.
I was pretty good at it. It was inbound sales, but anyway, they told me. I'm sure they told me they were recording me. I just had forgotten. And my boss came up to me. She was like, "Hey, really good job this week. You're saying the word 'yep' a lot, though." And I'm like, "Yep,
Yep, checks out.
I was like, "Damn, they're listening to me." But this is like,
But
15 years.
how many department calls go on, right? Zoom calls, Teams calls right now where Department A is just shitting on Department B.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Now,
all the time.
Every single call.
I record. So now that I've got my one app that I've built, and I keep trying to do it natively, and I keep running into walls, but nevertheless, every single call that I'm on now, I'm recording. It's all local though. Like that's my big thing. And I tell everybody, I'm like, "Hey, listen, I'm recording the call. Just know that it's all local. I'm running it through Command Plus as my model for it." But it's invaluable. When it doesn't record, I've had a couple times that it didn't record. I'm just like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't remember anything from that meeting.
The value, so the future of work is surveilled and and self-documenting.
Yeah.
It's not going to, it's probably one of the biggest changes that's going to happen to how we work, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think that we've got to figure out how to live in that world. I think that being careful with what you say is
super
is now important.
Yeah.
Which takes a little bit of the creative away.
Not me. I don't give a fuck.
That's a good point. I don't give a fuck either.
It's super frustrating because like I can think of a lot of developer meetings I've been a part of that we've ideated and had really good conversations around possible solutions, and we didn't take good notes because we're dumbass developers. And, it would have been really nice to be like, "Hey, what was that one thing I said last week with Ken?" You know,
totally. I use it literally every day. I'll go and I'll be like, "Oh, what were my takeaways from that meeting?"
Yeah.
All right.
That's why I got into a practice is like doing that essentially. As soon as the call ends, like I send a recap to everyone.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
But
I'm
you're
like, hey,
you're pulling from your memory.
Yeah.
My memory,
Yeah.
like I'm over here thinking of cartoons that I watched at 8 years
If I don't
old.
do it as soon as the meeting's over, it's gone.
Totally.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and one of them, so I was having one with prompt privacy, and Sabrina and I were talking, and it was like all this great information. And I'm like, I'm glad I'm recording this because I couldn't remember all of it. And then sure enough, something went wrong and it didn't record. And I'm like, oh my God. So I just tried to capture all of it that I could.
It's too valuable not to exist, and it will change things. And for
Totally.
for people like me, and my style is very off the cuff and instinctual, and so it hurts a guy like me.
Yeah.
Right, because they're gonna get you.
They're gonna
on something.
you're gonna get canceled.
I'm gonna get canceled. I'm getting canceled.
Can you do a like? We'll take this offline, and like after that call ends, just the two of you get on a call.
That would
Yeah.
be that would require you to have the forethought into we should take this offline versus
I was
Yeah,
actually
yeah, there's
told
that.
on this call, by the way, that it only requires one person's consent to be recorded in the state
Yeah.
of Indiana.
That's correct.
Oh, is it? Is
It's
it
one-
Indiana
yeah.
only
Yeah.
one
We're not
party?
California, baby. We're,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, I used to know the list of states back when I worked in journalism, but like I can't remember them now.
But also, isn't a lot of this a huge material, financial, and security risk for these companies?
Very well. could be.
When are the lawyers going to come in and be like, give me all
No,
give me all
no,
the
it
transcripts.
absolutely
Give me
will.
all the
Like,
transcripts.
once some of the lawyers at one of my bigger companies like really step back and started thinking about, oh, wait a minute, we have Zoom recording and transcribing every single one of our instances that we're having a conversation with. It's problematic.
Well, yeah, I'm sure some engineer at Boeing at some point has said on a recording, we shouldn't be doing X, Y, and Z.
yeah.
We don't need doors.
Yeah, doors are optional.
Soon you
All
just
right,
end
can
up
we
with
create
legal
the
counsel
first
on every
ever
call.
no AI Zoom meeting software? Let's release it next week.
So I think you should. It needs to have the AI in it, but it has to be private. That's the key. Is that the people who are going to do things privately will ultimately, I think, be able to win in kind of a long run.
Would you just have that like a read once and then burn after reading situation, which is a pretty good movie if you haven't seen it?
Potentially, yeah. It could just be something like that.
All right, so
Let's take this offline.
Send us your AI enabled Zoom alternative
Which-
software ideas.
Yeah.
Do it. Also, this is making me laugh because everything's coming full circle, right? It's like online shopping. Everything went online. Then they were like, "Oh, what if we had a place where you could actually try the things on?" And it's
Like a store?
We just keep doing this thing where we invent something.
Well, did you see Netflix is building out a retail model?
What?
Well, also they're
Like a Best Buy or a
They're probably just going to
Blockbuster?
sell Roku TVs.
Aren't they gonna do?
Yeah.
Aren't they gonna do commercials too or some shit? And it's just like they just reinvented cable. Like,
Where are they doing the Amazon thing where it's like, these are the shirts that are on this show right now.
Oh,
you can go
yeah,
order
right.
these.
Yeah,
right?
Jesus. Yeah.
Watching
Yeah.
the Amazon
buy
Prime
now.
stuff.
Now,
Buy.
Shane Gillis, if you've actually watched Shane Gillis's stand-up, hilarious, by the way, if you're not easily offended. I'm sitting there, I'm watching him, and I'm like, dude, I like that guy's shoes. And Emily and I were watching it. Literally like 10 minutes later, she's like, all right, they'll be here tomorrow. She like somehow or another found the exact shoes that he was wearing, and it was these guys. And she bought them for me because I was watching Shane Gillis and I liked it.
There's a website for furniture, I think, where you can like copy a link into it, or maybe it's not just for furniture. But anyway, you pin the link at the end of the website,
And it will go.
and it'll send you.
That's pretty cool.
A
Yeah.
cheaper look-alike thing, like West Elm,
Yeah.
$500 chair. Well, there's one on Amazon for $50.
Oh,
you know?
that's cool. Now, for our for the Android psychophants that we have on our thing, Android now has a thing where, like, supposedly, I guess it's a Google thing where you can circle like a thing that you would see in a video or whatever, and then it will try to go and find those
All
products.
12 Android users are having a great time with that.
Can't wait for Apple to come out with that feature.
This has been another Big Cheese podcast. Tell all our fans how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, I'm Chris Vanoy. I'm available at chrisvanoy.com or getaxiomatic.com. I'm working on training engineering managers how to actually manage people, which turns out they're a lot harder than computers lots of times. And if you're anything like me, you're going to screw it up for about 5 years before you figure it out. So yeah, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
No, that's awesome. Awesome.
Chris.
All right. We'll see you guys next week.